Just as a quick introduction, my name is Anish. As was mentioned, I lead energy for KPMG, energy, natural resources, and chemicals for KPMG globally. One of the reasons why I picked up moderating when I was requested was because this is such a new area. This is such an area to learn about in as much as we can, and that learning will continue because this is going in a continuous state of evolution. And I must mention that we have a wonderful panel over here. We have Mr. Ritudhwaj Singh, Country Manager at Targray, Mr. Anand Pandey, Head of Renewables at IPCL. We have Mr. Pankaj Sharma, Co-founder and Director at Log9. Now they'll exactly tell what they do in their words when they start their opening interventions. But I must give away something which happened in the last half hour. We had a fascinating discussion over there internally where we picked up many of the themes which are going to be very, very critical. And that's what we are going to explore. We are going to keep it like a conversation and talk about the way we talked about inside and let people become privy to some of those insights that came out from those discussions. But as we start, to each of the panelists, and I'll start with Pankaj Sharma on my left, right on my left, to quickly introduce himself and Log9 and have his first take on the subject we're talking about, and then we follow the sequence. Please.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. I'm Pankaj, one of the co-founders at Log9. Log9 is started as a material science company, so it's great to be on a panel where material science is being discussed, because now we are looked at as a battery leading company in India. But yeah, I think for us, the circle has come full circle now, given that everything started with materials, and at the end of the day, the batteries that we make have the advantage of those material science that we knew when we started the company. Log9 today, I'm very, very proud that it's at the cusp of inaugurating India's first domestically made lithium-ion cell that this country always needed. And I would be delighted if you could be part of that journey on the 21st of April when we will be inaugurating and dedicating that center to the country. That's India's first 50 megawatt hour lithium-ion cell. It has not been easy. We had to literally toil for the last 3 years to reach to this place, but now knowing that we've reached here, the future and the sky is very clear for us. That's one. And also we are creating batteries that are designed for India. So it's about creating a battery that's designed for 45 degrees. You can cut it, you can throw it in a thermal chamber, nothing happens. But the most important thing is when the driver drives it, it's a technology that is designed for them. So that's what the company is. We're about 500 people strong, and about 180 of them completely in R&D and development.
Before we go forward to the Ritudhwaj, Yeah, it's Indian names are troublesome. I have been always over here. I shouldn't be troubled by it, but sometimes it does. Ritudhwaj, yes. But Pankaj, just on your first take about the theme, when everything is changing so quickly, when you just see the last 3 years, what do you see? What strikes you?
I think it's the aspiration that India always wanted to do. We are no less than anybody else. Why should I look to my left or my right when I can create everything in this country? That sense of self-belief has come in this country. Those 500 people who have, I've been fortunate enough to, see them walk into the company and build this company. The average age of the company is 26 and creating India's first lithium-ion cell. That means, it's not supposed to come from some esoteric cloud technology and can create the technology for which self-reliance is needed. I've also seen there's a deep sense of maturity in the market when it comes to electric vehicle adoption. A lot of people, like if you read my card or anybody's card in Log9, it says Chief of Climate Action. I think what we all have started to realize that in this mayhem of the western side always developed and our eastern partners trying to capture the market, India is a stable, sensible, democratic system that is trying to push agendas of clean technologies, clean environment, 500 gigawatts of renewable energy, hitting its renewable targets much ahead of time. So I think what I have experienced in the last 3 years is a country where there is no roadblock for us in terms of developing technologies, the manpower, the technology, the access through the government funding, the private investment that has come to Log9. I'm pretty sure that 5 years back, if I would have gone into the market, tried to raise the kind of money that we have raised, nobody would have given us money. But today, sitting on this plate, I can raise money, I can do esoteric deep tech technology in this country supporting us. So I'm very positive.
Right, thank you. And that's really the new, innovative, young India which is at play. And honestly, I've been mentioning this even when we were at the speakers lounge, but also several other forums, including the IEW last week, that this is a completely different thing. Pre-COVID, post-COVID, you can't almost recognize the country. That's how it has become. Ritudhwaj, over to you about your first takes, about your introduction and your first take.
Thank you so much, Anish. So my name is Ritudhwaj, and I represent Targray. I'm the country manager here. Some journey that I have gone through with Targray, it's been a long journey already, about 15 years, and I've seen the company evolve from just being a company in optical media to now also be a part of quite a number of energy segments, including renewables, biodiesel. We are also getting into the agri-commodities business. We are also in the battery metal segment of the business as well. So quite a long journey there that the company has taken. And about the journey for India for the past 3 years, I would rather say that it's been a really good journey. And at least the hopes that I can see are that there's only a bright future ahead for us. And I'm pretty confident that we will see lots of new things coming into the country. And with the support that we are seeing from the industry, I think it will be a really wonderful journey.
Okay. And for Targray, India is a key geography for you?
Absolutely. So I think so for Targray, India itself is a very big market for us, especially when you talk about the renewables. Solar and energy storage have been a pioneer market for us since 2007. We've been doing quite a number of activities in the market and helping a lot of the various polysilicon manufacturers, wafer manufacturers, and cell manufacturers, and also the module manufacturers in the solar segment. We're also seeing a lot of tenders coming in for energy storage, which is something that is our prime focus as well, just for India. We've been doing this for quite a number of other regions across the globe. US has been certainly an area for us to have been very successfully doing that there with the large distributors there on the storage segment, on the energy storage segment. So I think it's high time that we'll have some really good success here.
Okay, thank you. We go over to Anand Pandey from IPCL. He represents a utility. I'll let him do his introductions. And once he does that, I have a specific question for him.
Thank you, Anish. Hi, good afternoon. Anand Pandey this side. I'm representing India Power Corporation Limited. India Power Corporation Limited is one of the highest rated power utilities in India. We are based in Kolkata, and we are operating almost 900 odd square kilometers of power distribution business in West Bengal. So that is one segment. I'm looking after another segment which is related to the renewables and capacity addition into new business domain. So we are present across demand side and supply side, both the sides, if you are talking about the storage. So we are not very much focused about the mobility part of storage. We are focused about stationary part of it. So we were exploring the opportunities into the thermal energy storage domain, pumped hydro storage, and of course, lithium-ion on battery storage, advanced cell chemistry domain. The main agenda of being here is to talk about the mix of possibilities of energy storage, not only about lithium-ion, which is the hot topic everywhere. So we are coming up with one thermal energy prototype solution here in India. We had a partnership with a Swiss-based company. So we are going to demonstrate that first of its kind thermal energy storage system here in India. maybe within a couple of months, and with the hopes that it is going to be cater the demand of utilities like us as well as the customers, whom's pain point is the cost effectiveness solution of storage.
Right. Okay, and before we come to Pankaj again, you represent a world of utilities which is, or you come from a world of utilities which is quite different in that sense from this. It's tightly regulated, price conscious, lots of different rules playing. So the world for you has been stationary or mobile?
For
Last
us
3
right now,
years.
as I said, it is stationary because our entire dependence is a stationary business, and where we have to manage with large scales. And of course, it may be a hybrid of energy storage, that might be pumped hydro, that might be thermal energy storage, that might be battery storage. I'm not saying it is clear no for us, but yes, it would be a mix for us.
No, but my question was a little figurative. My question was that last 3 years, has the utility sector changed in its outlook towards some of these aspects?
Yeah, because we were not mature enough to understand that what kind of options we are having today. If you talk about last 3 years, a lot of things are happening into the storage domain, which is a mixed feeling. Most of the times we are talking about the mobility sector. If you are talking about advanced cell chemistries, we are talking about only the mobility most of the times. From a utility perspective, the focus was not there because we were busy enough with the targets of renewable pumping in the new renewable technologies, maybe solar, wind, or some hydro solutions. But when we have been matured enough to understand that if you're talking about huge targets like 500 gigawatts in, say, next 7-8 years, then how we are going to manage the demand and supply curves? What are going to be the problems related to the transmission corridors? So once we have been matured enough understanding all these issues, then we have identified these solutions.
So that
and now
world
we are
has
focusing
moved.
towards that.
Yeah, in fact, I can say this, and I won't name the organization because I can get sued. But 3 years ago, just before COVID, I was at one of these big renewables players, okay, and in the boardroom, and their whole attitude was that why do I need to worry about what happens beyond my plant, from my generation facilities. It's somebody else's problem, and they were actually hammering the government around that, saying that, give me my PPA, I'm happy with it. I don't want to do it. I'll give you a very cheap power basis that PPA. And today, when I see those conversations, people are exiting the conventional, plain vanilla solar and wind PPAs rather than looking innovative things. So I think even that world has changed quite a bit. But one more announcement in the last couple of weeks has changed our outlook on energy storage materials, and that's been the announcement that India has found 5.9 million tons of lithium ore in Jammu and Kashmir. Now that possibly changes some things, and maybe it doesn't change some things also. So I'll go over to Pankaj first and ask, what does it change and what does it not change?
I was super delighted that it got discovered in J&K, at least got reported from J&K. I grew up in that state. My dad was posted there. I studied. And I always saw that, it has so much of natural beauty, nobody was able to see it. Now there is hidden beauty that everybody's talking about, that 5.9 million tons of hidden lithium that has been discovered. Let's put that number in some context. What does it mean? Is it good enough? How does it compare to the rest of the world? 5.9 million ton. If you were able to extract 100% of it and put 100% of that 5.9 million ton into a lithium ion cell, how much lithium ion cell can you make? The number comes out to be, say, typically it takes to create 1 gigawatt hour of cells, you need about 850 to about 1,000 tons of lithium. So that means 5.9 million tons should give you 6 terawatt hour of cell production. That's 6 times the current world production. So does this mean we've just become the richest country on the planet? Chale, J&K? But it's not that easy, right? Identifying something and making it available is 2 different things. We still import Greek yogurt while we have milk in this country. It's how you finish the raw material and how you add value to that unlocks the power of that resource. And that's the story of lithium extraction. I can get all the lithium out of that location and fill it up into piles, but you don't put lithium just like metal into a battery, into a cell. It has to go through an intermediary process where you have to first purify it and then convert it into something called the cathode active material. We don't make plates of lithium inside. If you open up a cell, it's a small nanoparticle of lithium that's sitting inside a powder of carbon. You have to take it, purify it, and then convert it into those small nanoparticles. That industry in India is not there. And our friends on the other side of our country, if they have done anything, and I truly appreciate, even though we have so much of friction sometimes, is that our ability to purify lithium into battery-grade lithium is what we need to be celebrating, is what we need to create, and that's where I'll encourage all of us to talk more about it.
Yeah, so I think it's a great thing, but the caution is that don't declare victory too easily, too early, because, for many reasons. One is that there's many a slip between the cup and the lip, as they say. It has got to go through many stages, and this is also not proven at this point of time. It's a probable reserve, so which has to go through its scientific processes to get to the proven level, and then you basically have, it typically will come down, unless you are finding new deposits, it will come down from that 5.9 to something a little more reasonable. Otherwise, we could have just declared victory and gone. So we can't do that. But Ritudhwaj, coming to you, how does that change trade dynamic? Does it change your own strategy for the country?
See, I think discovery of minerals has been something that, if you typically just talk about lithium, it has been discovered in quite a number of countries and quite a number of geographies. And as Mr. Pankaj rightly pointed out, not everyone has been able to break through to get it to something which is a usable form. So I think the challenge today would be to typically find a technology that we could harness and make it something into a usable form where companies like Mr. Pankaj's Log9 could actually use that and make lithium cells out of, which is what really is required for the storage sector to grow. Something that could really bring value to the country as well. So I think that's the most important thing that as a country we need to concentrate on, is to find a methodology to make sure that the discoveries that have happened here in India are actually utilized in the whole country itself, and not just that we take some part of it and export it out. I think the second challenge as well is the pace or the growth pace that we look at for this energy storage to be growing, and the discovery, how fast could be extractable, how long it would take to really get the metals out of it and actually convert them into usable form. So the time frame is also of utmost importance.
So how much? Is it a 10-year journey we are looking at between that ore being extracted to
could be more.
something? Could be even more.
Could be even more.
Okay, so we need to be realistic about that as well. Okay.
Because everything, so Chile is really, really a big resource, but have we utilized even like 5% or 10% of it? That's the real thing, It's easy to discover and say that's a big number there, yeah. Over what time frame is what I think we need to really look at and put that number into picture for the journey of energy storage that we have for the next 10 years. I think that's one of the things that we need to really focus our energies on, make sure that the environment in the industry is enough for an investor to actually put in the money to get the technology and also be able to implement it into usable form, where you could actually support the industry and develop that ancillary and the manufacturing hub that is actually required to get the cost competitiveness. Because remember, we are still competing with China.
So what you're saying is that, it's great that we have this resource, but that's just a first step of a very long journey, which will have its own challenges. And one of the biggest challenges is technology and the cost of production basis that technology. And just for this audience, 85% of battery processing, if I'm right, is in China. The capability, 85% of global capacity is in China. And that's a massive, massive concentration. I was in a very senior meeting with a very senior US dignitary yesterday. And their single aim is actually to find a counterbalance to China, a different pole from China. And India could be one, because we have companies like Log9 available to kind of further that journey. But also in general, the young, energetic country that we are, the inventive country that we are, we have the chance. But that chance has to get converted into reality. Now, how do you access the technology, the core technology? Do you develop it in India, or do you get it from somewhere else? And China is not going to give that technology, because even for solar materials, they have been now clamped down. So how do we get this technology on which China has such a stranglehold? I mean, we do admire China, but we also have to be wary of what it is, in terms of our risk exposure to that. And not just ours, the global exposure. How does that work? Maybe Ritudhwaj first you, and then we come back on that question to Pankaj.
Sure. I think from a perspective of where we could get the technology from, I think we have great scientists out here in India. And to develop it at an R&D scale, in terms of a technology, I think we have good capability in-house as well. So it's not that we cannot do it out here in India. However, where have the Chinese succeeded? We've got to kind of study that and understand what did they do different from what we did. I think the scales of production that they have, they've kind of been able to take it from the R&D scale to the commercial scales. And I think that's one big challenge that as a country we would face as of now, which we can see. We do have really good technology available. Say China closes doors, in Europe that's available, even in the US. So I think there are quite a number of avenues that we could explore and see the technology that's available out there on offer and implement it. India is a really big market already. And I think it's fair enough to say we are the most populous country in the world. So we have the demand that's there. We need to find a way to get the technology, start the production happening. And I think we are taking the right steps already.
Pankaj, to you, more indigenous, or we have to really look externally for technology, and then where?
I say let's not reinvent the wheel. What somebody has done, let's just quickly look through that and get in license what they have done. Find a technology partner somewhere in the Europe or somewhere in the US. Get started. But India has the talent pool, the deep tech mind, to then further build on top of it and bring it to a cost parity. See, at the end of the day, every extraction, every purification, every raw material, every cathode material has to compete with the same raw material from, let's say, a more cost competitive economy that is coming from at a ton scale. And you're right, I think the biggest step is how do we bridge the basic science and the large scale manufacturing? It's that central engine where policies and equipment and incentivization will get a lot of indigenization. I also want to touch upon this indigenization because the government of India, and for all of us in this room, I think we should make our own cells. Making our own cells is equal to making your own oil. Making your own oil is equal to being energy non-dependency on anybody else. A country like India, imagine if all of us can say that my country is energy independent from anybody else. Do you think anything can stop us from that? Literally, if we can make our own cells, what does it take to make our own cells? Raw materials. In a lithium ion cell, lithium is only 2%. So let's absorb that. Are we just chasing the tail? Let's talk about the 98%. What is that 98%? That's an aluminum foil, that's a copper foil, that's a carbon, there's a graphite, there's a polymer, there's a paper that goes into it, there are some liquid materials, there are some nanoparticles. Don't you think we have that in this country? If we can boot up that middle material science industry in this country that can take these basic raw materials, convert them into battery grade material, we have discovered our own oil. We have put this country on self-reliance on energy. And I think that's going to be our story. So I think what we will see is this need in the world to polarize away from one power center, which is China, and look as an alternative. And you're right. There is no better place than India where you have the minds in the hands tuned to the same frequency of work efficiency.
Right. And you also need money to do this. Is that a constraint?
How much does it cost to produce 1 gigawatt hour, or how much does it cost to make 1 gigawatt hour of cell? It's about $100 million. It's expensive. How much does it take to create the raw material that will go into that 1 gigawatt hour? It's about $50 million. $50 million in today's Indian context is nothing. There's enough capital. So I don't think we are constrained by access to capital to produce raw materials or finishing industries to do that. So I think we are set for it. The globe is looking into India. We have the opportunity. There are companies like us, and I'm sure there are more companies like us which will be born looking at lockdown and will come up. I'm hopeful. That's why I say in the next 7 to 10 years, this should be our moment in the world.
Right. So I think that's a critical distinction, say, from fab, okay, because fab is very, very expensive. Whereas over here, you don't need that kind of capital. For 1 gigawatt hour, if you can manage with $150 million, honestly, in today's Indian context, it's small beer. So it's really not a problem.
Less than 1% of the subsidy that we give on the fertilizer.
Yes. So I think if we don't need to take away anything for fertilizer, I think the country can find, and not get into a political controversy which is going to last us for years. So it's better to avoid that and get this going anyway. So I think that's a very, very important data point. What you need is not so much constrained by capital, but by the access to technology, indigenizing it, scaling it, and becoming world-class very, very quickly, and the possibility exists. I think that's a very positive story. We're going to switch to the demand side, Anand, and there are major changes which have happened in the markets, okay, and especially CERC has brought about a slew of changes, the SCED, then they've been talking about the market-based economic dispatch, and so on and so forth. And now, of course, yesterday I think there was an announcement of high price DAM, a day-ahead market, which will allow a lot of these resources to come into the market, because otherwise a straight-jacketed set of market rules did not allow resources which were needed, but which would be outpriced in the conventional market form. So what's your take on that? Is it really going to change your outlook to storage?
Yeah, definitely, because power markets in India, as you know, that it is highly regulated business. In most of the places, it is owned by the state, and it is highly price sensitive. So investing into such technologies which are very new, maybe if it is battery energy storage, maybe it is thermal energy storage, maybe it is any other. So the cost effectiveness of it is a big question. And the bankability of such technologies, again, as you asked earlier, that whether it is being funded fully, easily or not. So these are some risks which are associated with these technologies. And if at all, we can have better solutions like long-term visibility of the power sales, availability of such markets where real-time market is available for high price of electricity. So all these solutions are going to solve these problems to mitigate these risks of bankability of such projects. And then, of course, adaptability is going to be increased. So definitely, such kind of market is essential for any country. And a country like us, where almost each type of market is available, whether it is GDAM, GTAM, DAM, or real-time markets. The only thing is we have to sensitize it towards the high price band of it, because anyways, the discoms or the consumers are paying very high cost at the time of DAM or DSM, where the peaks are very high and we are paying 12 rupees, 13 rupees, 15 rupees price. And average price in the country is somewhere around 6 rupees. So you can have that band of 6 rupees, and if you have the real-time market to offset that risk, it is very easy to adopt such technologies.
Okay.
So it is price sensitive, but yes, if the proper mechanism is in place at the right time, at the right place, I think it is doable.
So if you stratify the prices and the markets in particular, then you think that all these technologies can be brought to play. Let's stay on storage, and the policymakers in recent times have been pushing pump storage. It wasn't in the diction, say, 2-3 years ago. When it was there, but it wasn't really talked about. We always have had a fair amount of pump storage in the 4.5 gigawatts already, more than 4.5 gigawatts there. As it happens next week, I'm going to see a site under construction. But the language changed quite a bit. Do you see that sustaining in a pump storage as one of the principal things, or the only thing almost our policymakers sometimes make binary choices? So for stationary applications, it's pump storage, and for mobility applications, it's lithium ion?
So I'll go a little back. We'll start with the National Solar Mission. 10 years ago we have started with. We were not very much sure that what kind of capacity we are going to install by, say, next 10 years. Later on, we realized that yes, there is 200 gigawatt potential, then 500 gigawatt now, and we are saying that we are going to achieve the target of 500 gigawatt by 2030. So the issues related to that high renewable dependency of the grid, how we are going to sort it out, what kind of transmission issues we are going to face, what kind of gaps in between of demand and supply is going to be there. So the solution is there within, and we have to plan it properly. A lot of extrapolation is being done on data, and simulation is being run. Almost all the sides of the stakeholders now agreed that somewhere around 150 to 160 gigawatt of storage we need by 2030. So from where it is going to come, we don't have one binary choice. We have multiple options there, and we have to explore it. The good point with the pumped hydro is that it is scalable. The size of pumped hydro is going to be in gigawatts sometimes. And it is very environment friendly, and it is site specific. So to achieve that high target of, say, 160 gigawatt, we need the multiple solutions, and pumped hydro is one of the best one. Because you can have maybe 10 or 15 such projects to scale the size up to that level. So then it is hot topic today, and most of the governments, they are having natural resources. They are having such locations where this can be introduced easily. So that is why it is the most favorable solution. And I'm also convinced that in Bengal also we are planning for a 1 gigawatt pumped hydro, which is going to come within, say, 5 to 10 years down the line.
Okay, but pumped hydro is, different things have different applications. As you said, we need all of that. But also pumped hydro is much more suited for a little longer duration of use, whereas for instantaneous use, for primary response, possibly batteries is something which we'll need quite a bit. So they are complements and not competes to each other. Unfortunately, sometimes that message does get missed out because it's not a single need in the power system. Now, coming to the chemistries or the battery structures for storage and mobility applications, are they different? Are the chemistries different? How do they construct the batteries differently?
Yeah, I mean, these two different cases. When you're driving a vehicle, what you need is an experience. You should be when you press, you should be able to suddenly get acceleration. When you take your pedal off, your regenerative braking or your brakes should be pumping energy back to the batteries. So you want a battery that should be able to charge and discharge very fast. Hence you need high C rates. Hence you need a chemistry in which the ions can move faster without degrading the plates. And hence you need materials, coatings on the plate. So you need the cell which is designed for that. If you look at what Tesla did, it went onto a particular cell chemistry that the world thought that's a chemistry. But honestly speaking, what the real trick of the trade around lithium ion cell when you use them in the car and vehicles is, how do you keep them cool enough at a 25 degrees to make them work? Is the secondary cooling technology that makes lithium ion cells the way you want them to work. And yeah, you've designed those cells to discharge fast. When you go to stationary, there you're looking for life. You want a battery, you don't want to be changing batteries every 3 years. That's going to push the cost up. You got a solar panel that's going to run for 25 years, make a battery that's going to run for 25 years. And hence you need a different chemistry over there. So that's one of our experiences. That's why we work at the titanate. In our lithium ion, we dope it with titanate there, lithium titanate oxide, and that makes the battery last 25 years. So I think yes, horses for courses, and for EV mobility, it's high charge, high discharge rates, batteries that can be cooled fast, and then on the stationary, slow charge, or longer life is primarily the thing that you're looking for. And you're right, instant power have a battery in place, and when you need, large scale backups, go for pump hydrogen or, thermal, that's great. So this hybrid is what going to clog the 160 gigawatt hour of the energy gap that we will have to reach our 500 gigawatt of renewables.
Okay. And other than lithium, are there any materials constraints for these chemistries for mobile storage applications?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there was one material that got pulled into this entire cycle, which was cobalt. And in the whole world, cobalt is found in DRC, and it's cobalt is never mined alone; it's mined along with copper. And so it's in Congo. You don't know the supply. The government system is not great, and all that stuff. So there's a chemistry that came out of it called NMC. The entire US ran on the NMC chemistry. And that's why NMC became such a popular thing. We brought to India, and then we saw some of these electric vehicles catching fire because cobalt has this tendency to unlock the oxygen from the materials. How do you get fire? You get temperature, you get oxygen, and then you get a thermal runaway. India is moving to a different chemistry, which is called the LFP. It's an iron-based chemistry, so it doesn't catches fire. The cobalt content is not there in that. So lithium is okay. We should look at how chemistries in which we don't use rare earth material like cobalt, and then move a little bit more closer towards an LFP or an LTO or a titanium oxide kind of chemistries. So dependency is there on lithium. Rare earth material should not be there, and then you have the rest of it, 98% in India.
Okay. Ritudhwaj, there has been some concerns about the cost curves because Bloomberg had its predictions out, and it's not quite following their predictions. So is it a temporary blip, or are we going to come back on course to the cost reduction curves?
Yeah, so a good point you brought up. I think at the end of the day, the cost curves are also dependent on the availability of materials. And if we look at typically just concentrating on battery energy storage systems and say, I want to track it through cobalt or lithium or some of the metals that are rare earth metals as well. So I think at that point of time, the cost curve structure will also be dependent on the demand that is being created for those kind of chemistries. So for sure, if we just continue to go this route and say, this is the only chemistries we're going to produce to satisfy the e-vehicles, I think it's going to be challenging. And you'll probably see this still go up. The choice lies with us to not just use one single source of storage. We need to find other storage areas and how we could typically diversify into different sources that do not maybe use these metals, or think about some different technologies that make it more feasible to make it happen. Another thing that we can also touch upon here is typically the life cycle of the battery itself, the battery pack. As Mr. Pankaj pointed out, 3 years, 5 years? So typically, what do you do after that? I think the concept of urban mining has to get in. And we can't just stop at black mass. We need to move out of it and kind of extract the metals from it and use it actually in the production process itself when you actually make the new batteries or the new cells. So I think that will be the next step for us. It's not a very developed industry as of today, and wherever it is, it's kind of concentrated on the east. I know some of the recyclers out of even Europe and the US, they're not able to extract more than say 50% of the metals out of it, and leave alone whether it's cost conscious or not as of now. So you need to have such technologies that you're able to actually extract it, which will certainly make it much easier for us to bring the cost curve down.
Okay. So you come from a background in commodity trading. Targray is commodity trader. Now, there is a certain amount of wariness in the market about commodity trading and what it does in terms of your cost curves and the volatility in particular. So I'm going to put you in a little bit of a spot and ask you, how scared should we be of the commodity trading cycles and concentration?
See, I think at the end of the day, as a commodity trader, what you typically look at are trying to not just be a trader. I think at the end of the day, you're trying to help out your manufacturers and your customers to a certain extent where there is stability that can be brought to the industry. Not just because of a price differentiation is what you do as a commodity trader. You also bring product closer to your customer. You also kind of, help them get the right product at the right time, at the right place. So I think as a commodity company, our focus is not just typically to trade. I think what we try to do at the end of the day is add value to a partnership that we have with both our suppliers and customers. Okay. And at the end, we need to typically find a way that we are able to help the industry grow in itself, because even being a trader on any product or commodity, if there is no industry, there is no trade.
Perfect. You fielded that question very well, that little tricky question. We can go around the room if there's any question, and then eventually after that bring it to a conclusion on the side. Just quickly introduce yourself, just a short question rather than a comment.
Yeah, good evening. This is Sandeep from Solar 91 Clean Tech Private Limited. So my question to the panel is that we have seen that in the past, I have read it somewhere, that China has become the master of refining and mining. So my question is specifically to Mr. Pankaj Sharma, that how, despite other countries also having the technology, not just India, but the entire world depends on China for refining and mining. So how India is going to develop that technique, because China has somehow mastered that art, and in fact, US, who were master at semiconductors, they have also not shared technology for so many years. So how India is going to get the technology?
We've done our own private investments into recycling, understanding how important recycling is. I think we should all, if any startup comes to you, do invest into them. Step one. Step two, what is it that you're hunting for? Makes recycling viable, right? Recycling, if you look at it, typically is the bottom of the pyramid. Recycling is done 150 kilometers out of the town by a semi-skilled or an unskilled person trying to recover some value. Whereas a lithium-ion recycling is a scientist in a clean room doing some high fundu chemistry and then extracting it. So it's a very process and an expensive process to do that. The reason China became so good at it is because the recycling companies are the cell manufacturing companies also. When you recycle, let's say I've talked about two chemistries just 2 minutes back. The recyclers in the US are recycling hunting for cobalt. Everything else is meaningless to them because everything else is much cheaper in the open market. It's the cobalt that is not there, and hence they're recycling. Their North Star to recycle is, let me find that cobalt in my NMC cell that LG or Panasonic created for Tesla. I'm going to get that recycled out. And then I want to use that cobalt and then going to sell it to Umicore or BASF and get some money out of that. It's that cycle that decides what you're hunting for, who's going to pay for that recycled material, and that's the industry that got created. In China, there is this huge 350 gigawatt hour manufacturers who are sitting and saying, give me anything that you find, and I'm ready to pay for that. So they have a ready-made market. If I extract cobalt, great. If I extract nickel, great. If I extract lithium, great. There is a buyer for that. So in India, if we have to boot up recycling, we have to create the buyer. Okay. You have to create companies that are in lithium-ion manufacturing, because once in India a recycler recycles lithium-ion cell, who does he go sell to? He has to go sell it back to the Chinese, and that guy is already cost competitive in the market. So the chicken and egg is this, that for us to make recycling happen in India, we have to have our own indigenization of lithium-ion cell manufacturing happen. Because if that happens, then I can get my lithium urban mined in India, and if I put recycled lithium back into my cell, the government of India can give me a certain PLI scheme on top of it for indigenization. So I think we are moving in that direction. It will happen. The only context is, in India, we're using LFP cell. It has iron, lithium, phosphorus. And in open market, all these three are very cheap. So unless in India we start to do recycling of NMC cell where the cobalt is there, it's a little bit of a tricky situation. Honestly speaking, I hope I had a better answer for you, but right now I see the problem more clearly.
Okay, but it's about ecosystems working. I mean, tight ecosystems working, which China has shown us, rather than just looking at one commodity and focusing on that. We'll go to the second question in the front.
Good evening, I'm Deepak Kotnala. My question is to Pankaj Sharma. Congratulations for your lithium ion thing. And another thing, what I want to understand, why in India the lithium, there is burning of EV vehicles, and why not in USA or Europe? Is it to do with the housing of the battery?
Yeah, why does EV burn in India and not so? Tesla has also burned. We don't get to see that much here. But it's the nature of, so what happens is, again, I'll come back to that, two things that just hold me to that. One is called an NMC cell, and another is called an LFP cell. NMC has cobalt in it. The NMC cell, it's a chemical reaction that's happening inside it. If it reaches 60-65 degrees, it's an exothermic reaction. There's two molecules combined together. They increase the temperature by 10%. You're not providing energy from outside. The chemicals within them have this tendency to come together, heat the cell, 60 to 80 within 6 to 7 seconds, 80 to 120 degrees within, let's say, 1 to 1.5 minutes. So that means if your lithium ion cell somehow reaches 60 degrees, after that it goes into a thermal runaway if you don't have a cooling mechanism in it. And typically in India, what we've seen the EVs catching fire have been two-wheelers, because in two-wheelers the battery is so small, I don't have cooling mechanisms in it. You're trying to just flow some air through that. It's very difficult to cool two-wheeler batteries because the space is not there. And hence, initial EV caught fire because we were using cells that were designed for the US. Now companies are putting the LFP cell, which has a thermal runaway starting at 150 degrees. So it was a wrong choice of chemistry. And then there was a wrong choice of how you connected those cells. You got hundreds of cells connected. Out of that, 10 cells are connected on one wire. So you don't know out of those 10 cells, if one cell is going into thermal runaway, your BMS or battery management system can't see which cell is going unstable. So you can't cut it off. Those are design challenges, problems. So some of the companies rushed early without thinking through the choice of the chemistry, the topology of the cells. We are in a much better shape now. I don't think we should see that anymore.
Fantastic. We have possibly time for one more question, if any. Otherwise, we will try and draw this session to a conclusion. None? Okay, there's one there.
Hi, I'm Kunal Saxena. I'm from AMP Energy. I just want to understand, what are the levers for the battery cost to go down in future? It has been on a good trajectory for past, I think, 15-20 years with a good learning rate. In future, one is I'm not asking about there are tax angles to it, like government can waive off BCD and other angles to it, but I'm just asking on a fundamental technical ground. One is the process improvement. Is the disruption in technology, like shifting from lithium to sodium, also one of the primary levers for bringing the cost down for the battery? And any other commentary that you think is relevant for bringing the cost down in over next 2, 3, 5 years?
10 years back, the cost of lithium ion cell was $1,000 per kilowatt hour. It has come down to something like $220 per kilowatt hour. So there has been an 80% reduction in cost in the last 10 years for lithium ion cells. When the sodium will hit the market, it will also start same place, $1,000 per kilowatt hour, because nascent technology, large scale production, only that kind of is the production. Lithium ion is produced at 500 gigawatt hour production today for supply chain materials to be produced at that large scale, and the factories to produce cells at that large scale, for the cost to come down to something like $220 per kilowatt hour. So while sodium is great, but it's going to take 10 more years to come into the market. But what's going to be the route map? Will the EV batteries become cheaper? Not for at least the next 2 years. The cell pricing in the market is so competitive, it's too difficult to get cells. The demand is so high. I think we almost plateaued a curve. That drop is not going to be there. We plateaued the curve. It will optimize. Idea is to bring it down to $100 per kilowatt hour over the next 5 to 6 years. That's through production, raw material supply chain, innovation in manufacturing, lowering the tax subsidies sometimes.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it follows steps, right? It comes down and then again finds the next wave of capacity coming in that will do it. Okay, we are out of time, so I have one last question for each of you on the panel. And the question is that if you had one wish to make to policymakers and regulators, okay, what would that wish be? in the context of storage? Anand first.
So if it is a wish, maybe I can be little personal about it. So I wish that there would be a circular economy kind of policy making, which covers the entire value chain of the storage, starting from sourcing of the material, maybe up to manufacturing, to creation of demand and supply. And from regulator side, the effective and transparent implementation of that policy, which is open for continuous improvement. It should not be that something is being written and is outdated even though, but still going on. So regulator has to have that mindset that they should be open enough for the effectiveness of it. And it has to be inclusive from the all stakeholders. If you're focusing like EV only or stationary only, it is not going to help. So it has to be inclusive from both sides.
That's quite a wish. Actually,
Yeah,
regulators have a tough job there. Okay, Ritudhwaj.
Yeah, I think for the policymakers, I would say more on the consistency path, because consistency is what gets the investor, to invest continuously into the production and manufacturing segment, and that's what typically gets the real physical movement going. When you talk about the regulatory aspects, I think keeping in mind the safety aspect of the whole industry, say for BESS in particular, and typically the end of life of the battery packs and everything. Is it going to be through the manufacturing side of the business, which is also being explored? Is it going to be through other regulators or other authorities getting into the picture, or something else? So I think we need to have that kept in mind in terms of, making it still sustainable at the end of the day.
Safety
We don't want to
and
have a
sustainability.
ton of inventory of batteries that couldn't have no use. So I think that should be kept in mind with recycling.
On your first point on consistency, I was hosting Morgan Housel, the Psychology of Money, the bestseller, best-selling author of that. And his point always is keep consistency, because it allows the effects of compounding to come in rather than sharp spikes. Pankaj.
Yeah, I think very straightforward, reminded of John F. Kennedy saying that in 1960, within the turn of a decade, we will put a man on the moon. I'm sure they didn't have the rocket, they didn't have the cryogenics, they didn't have anything. But he went out and put a large, audacious challenge and then enabled it with government funding, policies, government, and put the entire country in one single North Star direction of innovation, product creation, landing a man on the moon. Our moon landing is our lithium-ion cell, because that lithium-ion cell made in India will indigenize all of us, will free us from sending $120 billion to the friends on the the western side, and doesn't have to get imports on the eastern side. So let's discover our own oil. Let's walk into the North Star of making ourselves completely self-reliant on energy. And the only way to do it is everyone in this room should work towards it.
And for this theme, all of you are in your disposition, you're positive that we can get there?
If we can come from 1947 where we were to today where we are, why can't we go from where we are to where we can?
Right, perfect. Ritudhwaj, same for you?
I think the question is basically, do we want to really do it? If yes, then there's no question whether we can get there or not. I'm 100% sure we can do everything in this world.
And I sense that we want to do it really now.
Yeah, definitely. We have started thinking about doing it, so I'm 100% sure that we can do it. And we have enough resources, enough wish, enough will to do it. So 100% I'm positive it is
Enough
doable.
talent and enough money as well. So with that, this has been a fantastic panel. You'll agree with me. Thank you for being there. And thank you, my panel, for being such wonderful, pointing out such wonderful things for all of us to absorb. Thank you.